How's it going, everybody? Session here. Welcome to kind of a 2023 uh, overview review, if you will call it, for the Steam Deck. Actually, I wanted to at some point just kind of get my personal thoughts and feelings about it because I feel like we've had it for some time, and I keep on seeing a lot of other people's bounced thoughts up, and I just want to try to input my own sense of it all, just to kind of have it out there. Hopefully, find it helpful, and if you do, I appreciate it. And if you don't, let me know if you have any feedback or questions. So I have the Steam Deck here with me right now, and I think ultimately, when I first heard about this thing, the idea of playing games on Steam on the go just sounded like a really amazing idea to me, especially because a lot of the time it was mostly stuck on a computer that you had at home plugged in all the time. So having a Steam Deck now here in hand, it's really cool to know that there are every single game that I have on my Steam account, I can basically try to play on this thing. Now, performance wise, it plays perfectly fine. I know that there was a lot of conversation about games like Elden Ring and like Resident Evil playing at 60 frames at like max settings, and it really does hold well to it as well for games that kind of established that sense of performance. And I really enjoy knowing that I can actually play games like that and just have the best of both worlds of being able to play on the go but still have really high quality settings while playing the game at the same time. I think one thing that I've been mostly spending time on is playing this while also with my PC on. So, I'm an MMO guy. So on my actual main computer, if I don't want to run two games at the same time, which my computer is strong enough to run two games, at like medium settings, I would say. So if I'm like crafting with one game, but then have another game on in the background, one game uses Steam, one game doesn't, that's always an option. But now at least, I can separate the hardware requirement onto two devices, which again, it doesn't seem like logical, but like in some cases, it's whatever makes it convenient. So, like I usually have like I'm a Final Fantasy 14 player, so I have that here on my computer, for example. But then but I don't use Steam's version of it. I have the copy, but I don't use it. So at least at that point, I can play a Steam game on the Steam Deck, and that way, I craft here and then I play here, and that way also the like controls don't conflict with each other because I play on controller. So for me to be able to have my controller be stuck on the PC and then use Steam Deck for playing a different game. Like I said, it feels pretty nice actually. So I thoroughly enjoy just being able to have that flexibility. And again, like even if I didn't want to play, on my computer, and I can just take this with me to my living room or even the bedroom, then I have that option, and that freedom is really nice. So, and I think additionally to just being able to even take it outside, although I feel like it's a very expensive computer, if you will. Taking it outside is definitely a power move if you wanted to actually go that route. But for me, I went on a trip, and again, to pass the time if we're waiting in line or something of that nature, I have this device at the ready, and it was actually, it helps to have something out when you. I mean, obviously you'll be either with friends or whatever the nature is, but rather than like sitting on your phone, if you have this device handy with you, then having the device is actually a nice convenience. So I thoroughly like the fact that I went to purchase this. I was kind of debating it at first, but then as soon as my friend pre-ordered it, they got the first batch because they were doing it in waves for pre-orders. So I got the second wave, um, and so I was able to get mine. I think it was like midwinter, so I've had it for quite like I think it's like 6 months ish at this point. I want to say so something of the nature like that. Yeah. Now the only thing that's kind of like a weird caveat to it is that with all the games that you have available on Steam, they essentially have them filtered between games that are verified, meaning that they play perfectly for like they're designed with intentions to the Steam Deck. So like when the game loads, it just loads as if like you're playing it on your computer, so it's easy. There's games that are like verified and playable, meaning like it'll play, but then it's something there's always like a weird like thing going about it that you gotta like figure it out. Then there's games that are untested, which it's like they haven't even bothered to try and figure it out. And then there's games that are like unsupported, and that's just kind of like a mystery question mark in that scenario. Now, of course, verified games there aren't a lot of them, but a lot of the ones that are usually coming out with at a newer release date, like like Resident Evil 4 remake came out recently. There was another game called Atomic Heart that was a couple months back. It's like a really good like action adventure like BioShock S game. It was really good. Those kinds of games are playing very perfectly well for the Steam Deck in mind. And then you have other games that exist, such as I have like Tomb Raider here, and it's playable, but again, if you're the control scheme with the actual buttons in mind for the Steam Deck are thought of, but I think one issue that people might run into with playing a Steam game on a Steam Deck that isn't fully verified is like QuickTime events. When you have to press a button very fast with in a reaction time scenario. So with Resident Evil 4, like the remake at least, I haven't encountered a QuickTime scenario event that required me to like press a button in the moment. Although there is, not I don't want to try and spoil the games or anything like that, but that game is verified for the Steam Deck, and so it plays perfectly fine as if you have a controller in your hand either way, so it works. However, the classic Resident Evil 4 is actually not supported. Um, it's technically like verified and playable, but the it runs into that caveat of because again, like there are QuickTime events, so it requires you to press a button to either like dodge a thing, and so in that scenario, it's likely to have like keyboard mouse controls for QuickTime events versus it actually having like X or A because it's gonna it's gonna utilize like an Xbox control scheme for that game, which I thankfully the scheme is similar to that of an Xbox controller, but either way though you're still gonna have to either kind of figure out which buttons are allocated to what or just test it out for yourself and see what it does. I personally haven't done that. I've only played the classic and the remake on my actual PC, so again, like I have no issues playing it there. But playing it on the Steam Deck itself has been, it's a question. And then you run into other scenarios too, where like it, in some cases, it doesn't make sense. Like for example, Resident Evil 2 remake is fully verified, but Resident Evil 3 remake is not. I mean, it's verified, but it's not. It's playable, but it's not fully verified. So they kind of distinguish it between like a green check mark and like a yellow like eye like caution sign. So RE3 remake has the caution symbol, but RE2 is fully verified and RE4 as well. So it makes you wonder like how do they go out of pattern for 2 being good, 3 being like okay, and then 4 being good. Um, and I think that's where sometimes it makes me wonder like why is that the case scenario, but I think like it's just a matter of testing it. That's really what the biggest mystery is like if a game is labeled as untested or unsupported, because again unsupported just means that it's gonna try to load and boot the game up as if you're playing it on a computer. And this usually happens for either older games or just games that have like a weird like loading process. So a good example of this is actually Lost Ark. Like Lost Ark is a game that I've tested as an MMO because it is able to be like downloaded via Steam, but you actually can't install it on the deck, and it's going to give you the issue of it booting because again it has a separate client in terms of how it loads I guess, and like it's labeled as an untested game uh and even unsupported, and it literally just won't load, so there's nothing that you can do about it, at least as far as I've tested. Lost Ark was one of those games that if I wanted to try and play an MMO at the same time as a different one, I can try and give that a go. But Lost Ark was one of the few games where I was like excited to try out and then found that it just doesn't work at all. Um, so I think that's like the trick is that it'd be good to figure out which games are good to work in, and the problem is that you have to just find out for yourself. It's easy to do so. You just download it and see if it loads and then give it a try. But I think one thing I would love for them to do is give the player base a sense of freedom in a way, just to say, hey, I've tested the game. I can confirm that it does work, although you have to change this or that to make it like a get the green check mark or the caution like verified and tested playable game scenario thing, but it doesn't really seem like the list of those games that are playable are being updated that are not already verified. So like a verified game is much easier to add on the list because they've tested and verified it. But I don't know if there's anybody that's genuinely trying to play the game that are untested and unsupported and trying to confirm their verification. If that is something that you could do, I would actually love to be a part of that because it'll help me like limit this list a bit more because um again, like some games I've tried out and other ones I haven't, and I'd like to go down that list and see. A good example of this is there's a really old school mobile game, if you know about it. It's called Adventure Capitalist, where essentially it's like a calculator game. You just like sit there and like collect money, then you spend more money to make money, and then it's like an auto calculator thing with time. That game is labeled completely as unsupported. However, it works perfectly fine. It relies a little bit on the because it was like an iOS or like Android game, so you like use a touchscreen, but you can technically use like there's like these two um like thumbstick like pad things underneath the actual sticks, and they basically serve as um I want to say like a touch screen, but for these controls. So like it'll actually go up and down depending on if I like tap and that kind of thing. And then this basically serves as like the right stick too, and you can drag it. So you can actually use this to drag like a mouse, and then you can click, and it'll actually function like a mouse. And you can play any game that's unsupported with the schema because it basically kind of replaces that. So what's cool is that at least as far as all their games go, despite them being like unsupported and that sort of thing, there is at least a way to allow their controls to have you play the game. But to get that confirmation is the tricky part. So I feel like that's something that's worth again like trying out. And again, you'd have to just figure it out for yourself. But to make a list of the games that work and don't work is a bit of a headache. So I think it's just a matter of being able to put that into perspective and then just give it a try. And yeah, like I said, the fact that some games are like out of order in terms of verification versus non, it doesn't make sense. Like there's a fighting game I have here. It's called Blaze Blue. So I'm not like a professional or anything, but I think Chrono Phantasma came out old earlier versus what's called Central Fiction. So the order of games in terms of release date, it was Chrono Phantasma, Central Fiction, and then Cross Tag Battle. I think those are the three BlazBlue games. So like the first one, which is older, is verified and fully playable. The second one is unsupported, and then the third one is like verified and playable, but it's not fully verified where it fully functions perfectly fine. So again, if there was a way to kind of bridge that gap and figure out which ones, because I would assume, if one game is basically a sequel of another in a way, then it should just naturally have that verification. But I don't know what the testing is for that, so I feel like it kind of depends on how they actually go about that process. Which does beg the question of like how do they even go about that? Then you have really cool games like Power Wash Simulator, which is a fully verified game and it plays well. Although I mean, I personally like playing it with like a keyboard and mouse setup, but to play it with the Steam controls is also really nice. Same thing with like I play like Marvel vs. Capcom 3 sometimes, like just to kind of throw myself in there and just do some combos or go through the arcade mode. It's also fully verified, and that's really cool. So I like that there's a lot of games that you can play. Um, what's also really cool is that they actually have a separate list of games that are like you basically can cycle through all games that are just in your library that are verified always, which is cool. You have the list of all the games that you just have on your account. You have games you've installed, and that sort of thing. So it's cool to like actually bounce around and see what games you do have available. So, like I said, I personally like the idea that I can just take any game that I have here and just download it, and then if I want to take it with me on the go, I totally can. Additionally, though, I think this is the other crazy part about this device that makes it so good is that there is actually a desktop mode where you can actually turn this thing into a computer, um, which I think is heavily slept on, like heavily. So if you hold the power button over here, and you can actually switch to desktop mode, it might take a while, because it's gonna like reboot your Steam Deck and then basically go through the process. But then you have like an actual PC setup. You have like apps on the top of the games you've downloaded. You have like a browser. They have Firefox, I think, initially installed here, which is really cool. Um, and you can use it for downloading that. So if you actually try to download other programs or other things too, it'll actually work in that case scenario for this device as well. So I feel like if you wanted to try and download like I don't even know, like I mean Streamlabs might be one for sure to check out, but any program that's like lets you utilize. Like, I wonder if you can download like BattleNet and then play like Call of Duty. I feel like you can do that. It might be a lot to take out of the processing power for this, because I think the Steam Deck is primarily designed to be played in what's called gaming mode, which is the other interface we had earlier. But to have the ability to go into a desktop mode and actually like access the internet. If I like, I can open up Firefox here, right? And then all of a sudden, uh, I just have access to like YouTube, which I think is actually really cool. So you easily have the accessibility of just being able to access a browser mode, and you can most likely download other browsers too. Like I said, it came with Firefox inclusive, but you can probably just get like Chrome or Safari or whichever browser you're most comfortable with. And then same thing, if you have like your login information for that browser, if you log in with that, it's probably going to work as well, which is really cool. So I think all in all, like if you really want to get your hands on a Steam Deck, I think it's totally worth it. Whether you own a PC or not, it really depends on how well you plan on using it. Um, like I said, I use this like every once in a while when I don't want to be at my computer, or if I'm going on like a trip somewhere, I'll bring this thing with me as like an in case, and then whatever games I want to play. Um, the only real like not negative feedback I would say, but this thing is bulky. It's very large and it's one piece, right? So that's like the thing that's always been um a challenge compared to like the Switch, because people talk about it being like a Switch killer and all that kind of stuff, and it's just not true, because despite the Switch here having Nintendo only games. Like, you can't put Nintendo games on this thing really. And like here's like the size comparison. So this thing is very large. It's not heavy, but it's still bulky. And this is more compact. And the other thing, of course, is that the Joy-Cons are detachable, so it gets even smaller by comparison with the Steam Deck. So I feel like in that case scenario, if you're gonna play the Switch, you can at least put the screen down somewhere and then play with the Joy-Cons. But with this thing, it has to be in your hands the entire time if you're playing it portably. I mean, there is a dock for the deck, which is cool, so you can totally like attach it to a monitor and that sort of thing. But I feel like most people are going to spend their time just kind of sitting here, right, looking downward, and then just playing it as it is. And that's what I do. Like I said, I use it for that exact purpose. The other thing that, I mean, it makes sense too, that it's like not a possibility, but it is still like an issue, if you will, is that if you try and play a game for Steam on the Steam Deck and then try and boot a different game or even the same game on like your computer, it'll immediately kick you out of this one. So like you can't have two Steam games running at the same time, which makes sense. Like, that's obvious. But I like, there's a part of me that would have wished to like the idea of the games being recognized as separate games, that you could run them like separately but on different devices, because I haven't actually tested this myself, and I feel like it's something that I should just throw myself out and figure it out. But I don't know if you can. I'm pretty sure you can run two Steam games, or just two games that are downloaded through Steam on your computer. I think that works perfectly fine, but the Steam Deck can't do that. And I tried that with a lot of different games too. Um like I tried uploading or playing Resident Evil 2 remake on here and then upload the same thing on my computer, and it literally kicks me out of this device and says like, oh, like it's already running somewhere else. So they closed that version in order to upload the version on my computer. So that's like a weird like little caveat to it all. So, but I mean, again, the freedom of being able to play on the Steam Deck is still really nice regardless of the fact. So I really enjoy just having that freedom as a whole. So I think all in all, like I said, if you're a big fan of this thing, if you're gonna try and get your hands on one, I highly recommend it. I love this thing. It's really cool to know that I can take this game with me on the go and just take it where I want to, or get more comfortable and on the couch, throw on a TV in the background, and then just kind of have that for background noise or watch a show, and then just keep the gaming going. So I think it's 100% worth it. Let me know what you think. Like I said, I like this device a lot. I think it's worth a buy. So thank you for watching. Take care.